Not mine.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Pad Paramahamsa Parivijakarya Sutta Sutta Shri Srimad Divine Grace Sri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Lita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Lita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Lita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So nice having a group that likes to chant. Haribo. So we are reading today from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta, Adi Leela chapter 5, the glories of Nityananda Balaram. Text number 66 is on the board. Eka anga base kore mayate milana. Eka anga bhase kore mayate milana. Eka anga bhase kore mayate milana. Maya utte jonne tobe brahmandera gana. Maya utte jonne tobe brahmandera gana. Maya utte janma tobe brahmandera. Maya hoite janmai tabe brahmandera gana. Eka anga base kore mayate milana. Eka anga base kore mayate milana. Maya hoite janmai tabe brahmandera gana. Eka anga base kore mayate milana. Eka anga base kore mayate milana. Maya hoite janme tobe brahmandera gana. Maya hoite janme tobe brahmandera gana. Chant please. Eka anga base kore mayate milana. Eka anga base kore mayate milana. Maya haite janme tabe brahmandera gana. Maya haite janme tabe brahmandera gana. Eka anga base kore mayate milana. Eka anga base kore mayate milana. Maya haite janma tabe brahmandera gana. Maya haite janme tabe brahmandera gana.
Eka anga bhase kare mayate milana.
Eka anga base kore mayate milana.
Maya haite janme tebe brahmanendra jana.
Maya haite janme tabe brahmandera gana. Mataji.
Eka anga bhase kore mayate milana.
Eka anga Anyone else?
Eka ange bhase kore maya
Eka anga base kore mayate milana.
Maya vate janme kabe brahmande ragana.
Maya vate janme kabe brahmande ragana. Eka. One. Anga base. Bodily reflection. Kore. Does. Mayate. In the material energy. Milana. Mixture. Maya. The material energy. Haite. From. Janme. Grows. Tabe. Then. Brahma Andirgana. The groups of universes. Translation. The reflected rays of his body mix with Maya, and thus Maya gives birth to myriad universes. Purport. And it's a 2.5-page purport, so please bear with me. The Vedic conclusion is that the cosmic manifestation visible to the eyes of the conditioned soul is caused by the Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead, through the exertion of his specific energies, although in the conclusion of atheistic deliberations, this manifested cosmic exhibition is attributed to material nature. Everyone got that? This is a very technical purport. The energy of the Absolute Truth is exhibited in 3 ways: spiritual, material, and marginal. The Absolute Truth is identical with this spiritual energy. Only when contacted by the spiritual energy can the material energy work, and the temporary material manifestations thus appear active. In the conditioned state, the living entities of the marginal energy are a mixture of spiritual and material energies. The marginal energy is originally under the control of the spiritual energy, but under the control of the material energy, the living entities have been wandering in forgetfulness within the material world since time immemorial. I'm going to stop reading here if you just want to comment. Om Jnana Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurumidam Nina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shaktamina Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Dadati Svagadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Vagnatam Nitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijna Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhamritam Shah Hare Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaskute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vancha Gopadurubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevcha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. The reflected rays of his body mix with Maya, and thus Maya gives birth to myriad universes. So this chapter is entitled The Glories of Lord Nityananda Balaram, and Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj expands on the 10th verse, the very beginning of Adi Lila. The initial 14 verses are what we call seeds of the entire Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta. Just like you have a seed of a banyan tree. When it grows fully, it produces many, many thousands and thousands of additional seeds. And one seed contains the essence of the entire tree. So in the same way, these initial 14 verses are from the diary of Swarup Damodar Maharaj, who was the personal secretary of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this particular chapter is an expansion, an elaboration on the 10th verse, which I will read. And remember, this is from Swarup Damodar Goswami. I offer my full obeisances unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, a partial part of whom is Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. From the navel of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu sprouts the lotus that is the birthplace of Brahma, the engineer of the universe. The stem of that lotus is the resting place of the multitude of planets. So, starting from in this chapter 5, from like verse 15 up to 107, 108, Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj is expanding on that statement by Swarup Damodar Goswami. And he gets into very deeply the science of the creation of the material worlds and how it is different from the spiritual world, and the fact that there's three, of course, the Lord has unlimited energies. They're basically divided into three categories: the superior, the marginal, and the inferior energies. And a lot of the verses that Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj writes are elaborations of Sri Brahma Samhita, from the verse starting about number 6 in the Brahma Samhita, chapter 5, going up to about 27, something like that. He speaks about how the material energy, the material universes and material manifestation develop. And it's a very, very scientific process that no other religious movement, no other religious tradition has this knowledge. It's just extremely confidential knowledge in the sense that it speaks about the Lord's different energies and how they interact with one another and thereby cause the creation of the material energy, material nature. Scientists, Prabhupada speaks elaborately in this purport about how material scientists, they believe that the material energy is the cause of material nature. They see no higher cause. Or when somebody does point out a higher cause, they're seriously and literally blackballed and they get fired from their professions. This point is very much elaborated on by Sadaputra Prabhu and Chaitanya Prabhu in their book Forbidden Archaeology, where they explain how scientific evidence that's discovered that is contradictory to the the present theory of evolution and creation of the universe. If you present evidence that's contrary to that, you're fired from your job, you're blacklisted, you cannot get a job in that field ever again. So the suppression of truth and the elevation of illusion, really, the suppression of truth. And the British very strongly did this during their reign in India. They wanted to really put down the Vedic literatures and the spiritual traditions within India. And so they spoke very poorly about the Puranas, about the Vedas, and they just made it appear that these are just, stories that your grandmother told you when you were trying to fall asleep. But actually, it's a great science. And this particular verse is, in fact, I'll read a couple of them. I'm sure you're all quite aware of it. Today and again, the reflected rays of his body mix with Maya, and thus Maya gives birth to myriad universes. The Purusha enters each and every one of the countless universes. He manifests himself in as many separate forms as there are universes. When the Purusha exhales, the universes are manifested, and with each outward breath, thereafter when he inhales, all the universes again enter his body. Where do we find such knowledge outside of this tradition? It really is non-existent. And what Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj is explaining, that Karanadakshaya Vishnu is one of the three Purushas, and he's lying on the causal ocean, and as he exhales, countless, unlimited universes emanate from the pores of his body as seeds, golden seeds, and then they expand, and as they're expanding, he expands himself as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. He enters into each and every universe, and then there's further expansions as the supersoul, as the living entities, and so on and so forth. And so he exhales, and the universes emanate from his body, and as he inhales, they all get withdrawn back into his body. And now, how long does it take for us to take a breath? It's just a few moments. But in our time, the existence of a universe, let me see if I get this right, 432,000 years is the length of Kali Yuga, and the Satya Yuga is 4 times, Treta is 3 times, Dwapara is 2 times, and Kali is 1 time. So 4321 is 10. 10 times 432,000 is 4 million years, 332,000. That's, let me see, times 1,000, so that's 4 billion, 320 million years. That's 12 hours for Brahma, and another 12 is 8,640,000,000 years of our calculation. That's 1 day. And he lives for 100 such years. So it's trillions of years according to our time calculation. Trillions of years. And who can relate to a trillion? I mean, if you have a pile of $1 million, say $1 million, okay? Pile of it. If you have 1 million of those piles, that's 1 trillion. Just think of that. 1 million piles of 1 million. That's 1 trillion. And Lord Brahma lives for many trillions of years. And all those trillions of years combined together, it's 1 breathing cycle. Mahakrishna. An exhalation and inhalation. And during that time, unlimited numbers of universes emanate from his body. And they expand. Lord Brahma takes birth upon the lotus flower extending from the navel of Lord Vishnu. Countless living entities take birth and go through just an endless cycle of birth and death. And then the whole thing gradually collapses as Mahavishnu inhales. It's really quite amazing when you think about it. So Srila Prabhupada is, let me continue in the purport a little bit here. So Srila Prabhupada writes in this first paragraph that although the Lord has unlimited numbers of energies, they're primarily divided into 3. He said the superior, the inferior, and the marginal. And we, the living entities, we're marginal energy. And why the term marginal? Because we can be influenced by the superior energy and go in that direction, or we can be influenced by the inferior material energy and go in that direction. And thus become spiritually conscious or materially bodily conscious. And all of the universes, how many living entities are in this room? So there's so many human beings. But within our body, there's so many different living entities that exist within our body, bacteria and things like this, and then which are impossible to count. When we try to actually get a mental grip on the number of living entities in any one universe, it's absolutely impossible to do. And then there's unlimited number of universes, so there's just a tremendous amount, there's not a word to properly describe it, a tremendous amount of living entities in the material energy. Because they wanted, not they, we also wanted to compete with the Lord. We also wanted to be enjoyers, the supreme enjoyers. And so out of a sense of love, Krishna, he created this material environment so that we can exercise that desire. We can fully act on that desire to be the supreme controller, the supreme enjoyer. So the point here that Prabhupada is making is that we can be, because we're marginal, we're a tiny portion of God, we can be influenced one way or the other, to the material energy or to the spiritual energy. Prabhupada continues, the conditioned state is caused by misuse of the individual independence of the spiritual platform. For this separates the living entity from the association of the spiritual energy. So very clearly, Prabhupada says that by misuse of our independence, that separates us from the spiritual energy. Just as much as a criminal is separated from the law-abiding citizens and put in a prison or a jail. Why? Two reasons. One, the main one, is so that the law-abiding citizens are not disturbed by the person who doesn't want to follow the laws. And then the second reason is to rectify the mentality of the offender. But when the living entity is enlightened by the grace of the Supreme Lord or his pure devotees and becomes inclined to revive his original state of loving service, he is on the most auspicious platform of eternal bliss and knowledge. The marginal jiva, or living entity, misuses his independence and becomes averse to the eternal service attitude when he independently thinks he is not energy, but the energetic. This misconception of his own existence leads him to the attitude of lording it over material nature. I'm going to read those two sentences again, because they're very instructive. The marginal jiva, or living entity, misuses his independence and becomes averse to the eternal service attitude when he independently thinks he is not energy, but the energetic. This misconception of his own existence leads him to the attitude of lording it over material nature. So when we think that we're a product of the material energy, when we think that I'm this body, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm an American, I'm an Indian, I'm a tree, I'm a demigod, I'm a dog. When we have that misconception that we're thinking that we are part of the energetic rather than the energy, because actually we are a tiny part of the energy of the Lord. And by having that misconception, it leads us to, Prabhupada says, to a desire to lord it over the material nature. Material nature appears to be just the opposite of the spiritual energy. The fact is that the material energy can work only when in contact with the spiritual energy. So material scientists, they don't understand that point, and they kind of refuse to accept it. They think that the material energy is the cause of material energy, and therefore you have so many theories. Big Bang theory, that's quite common. But it's really a little foolish when you think about it. I'm fond of using this analogy. Let's say you're in your kitchen and you want to make a loaf of bread. So you get the flour, you get the water, you get the yeast if you use yeast, you get, so whatever the ingredients are, you get them and you put them together. Just on the countertop. Okay, so they are not, they're present, all the elements are present, but they're not combined. And then put a firecracker in the middle of it, or a little piece of dynamite or something, just blow it up. You're going to get a loaf of bread? You're going to get a chapati? You're going to get anything? You're going to get a mess. But scientists are thinking, no, it's like this. And a big bang, boom! And from that big bang, you get a loaf of bread. But if you think about it, no, you got a huge mess in your kitchen. That's all you got. It's a huge mess. But they're thinking that, no, this is how creation begins. But it's really a little foolish when you think about it. But it's because they are denying the existence of a Supreme Creator. And therefore they're looking only within the material elements, cause and effect, to find the ultimate cause. But as Lord Brahma states in the very beginning, the very first verse of the only chapter of Brahma Samhita that we have, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadyadir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. That he is the cause, that Krishna or Govinda is the cause of all causes. In the material world, we can only think of cause and effect. That, okay, this happened and therefore that happens. And so therefore you have chaos theory and the misconception that a butterfly flaps its wings in Mexico and causes a tsunami in Indonesia. But because so you can see that somehow these different activities are connected one to another, one to another, one to another. But just because they're correlated doesn't mean that one is the cause of another. Correlation or relation between something doesn't mean that the former is the cause of the latter. But they don't understand that there's a supreme cause of all causes. And that supreme cause is the Supreme Personality of God, Krishna. And so, therefore, Krishna said, the knowledge is stolen by illusion. It's completely covered. They don't have access to it. And another analogy I like to give is, suppose there's a child, say, doesn't have the age, say 12, and their father has set aside a trust fund for them. But with any trust fund, there's requirements that have to be met before you can access what's in the trust fund. Whether it's wealth, whether it's property, whatever. You have to meet certain qualifications before you can gain access to whatever is in that fund. So in the same way, we're thinking that I'm this body. Actually, we're spirit soul. We're a tiny particle of God, and we have godly qualities. But because we're thinking I'm the body, and we have the disease, Prabhupada referred to it as skin disease, we can't access our real spiritual nature any more than a child who has not met the qualifications of the trust can get access to the funds that are contained in that trust. The qualifications have to be met before we can have access. So the same way, we are eternal, we're full of knowledge, we're full of bliss, and so many other spiritual qualities. But as long as we have the infectious disease of thinking, I'm this body, we don't have access to our real, eternal, spiritual nature. And so this access comes by the purification of the heart, purification of the consciousness, which Srila Prabhupada said in many, many different places. This purificatory process is the process of bhakti yoga. And so simply by following this process, actually we're very quickly cured of our material consciousness. And when the disease is removed from the body, the natural, healthy condition of the body manifests. So when these material conceptions are removed, sarvopati, upadis means material designations. So when all of these material designations are removed by the process of devotional service, our natural, healthy, normal, spiritual nature automatically becomes manifest. Automatically. We don't have to do anything else. As much as when we follow the directions of the physician to counteract the effects of an illness, when we follow them, the symptoms of the illness are gradually reduced and our normal, healthy nature once again becomes manifest. We're no longer bedridden, staying at home, can't do anything. No, we've got a life outside of the bed, outside of the house. But when we're in this diseased state, due to illness, we can't act in our normal healthy condition. And so similarly, when we are thinking that we're this body, we cannot act in our normal healthy position as part and parcel of God. And so all of the things in our trust fund, so to speak, eternality, full knowledge, complete bliss, full knowledge of our understanding of our relationship with God, full knowledge of the understanding of our relationship with one another, with God's different energies, with His parts and parcels. We can have access to that once the disease is fully eradicated. And the process, again, is simply chanting Hare Krishna, following the regular principles, learning the scriptures, because the scriptures contain the philosophical basis for the spiritual material energies, how they work, how they interact, what the relationship is, and examples, good examples and bad examples, of people within the universe, whether it's demigods, devotees, regular, ordinary people like you and me, what happens when we follow properly and when we don't follow properly. So both sides are depicted in the scriptures so that we can understand, oh, if I do like this, I'll benefit. If I do like that, inauspicious things will happen to me. And there's so many examples. And there's a story of Indra, who is the president of the demigods in the heavenly planets. He was being worshipped on his throne by all the different demigods. And he saw his guru, Brihaspati, walk into the assembly, and he completely ignored him. Didn't get up, didn't acknowledge him, didn't offer him a seat, did nothing. And the spiritual master understood his mentality, and one thought, okay, I will purify him, and he completely rejected him as a disciple. A little harsh, for Kali Yuga, for us, it's a little harsh. Anyhow, when he was rejected, the spiritual master for the demons, I forget who it was. Shukracharya, thank you. He understood. The demigods are now in a weak position because they have lost the protection of their spiritual master. You demons, go attack and conquer them. And they did, and they became victorious. Why? Why did the demigods lose? Because they offended their spiritual master. They no longer had his protection. And therefore, they were simply left with their own personal energies to fight against the demons. But the demons are following the instructions of their spiritual master, therefore their power was greater. They defeated the demigods. So there's so many stories like this in the scriptures to show this is the proper thing, and this is what happens when we follow the proper course, and this is what we don't do, and this is what happens when we do what we're not supposed to do. So the scriptures are full of examples like this, simply so we can understand. And that's why it's one of the reasons why it's so important that we study the scriptures. So we see by examples of others, we learn from their mistakes, and we learn from their positive actions, and also so that we understand the underlying principles behind the material nature, behind the spiritual nature, and how they interact. Because regardless of how it appears, the entire material universe works according to specific principles. And so when we understand those principles, then we can understand how to act according to time, place, and circumstance. It's past 9:15. We're supposed to stop speaking. I only got through maybe one page of the purport. So I will stop and ask any questions, comments, corrections. Do we have a microphone?
The microphone doesn't work.
Oh, okay. Go. David, you have.
I was thinking about the living entity. Well, there's the energetic and the energy. So when the living entity is thinking, the energetic, then there's going to be problems. But it seems like we're set up to think we're the energetic also, because being part and parcel of Krishna, qualitatively one with, there's that element of being the energetic. For example, if there is some task at hand, and one is thinking, okay, well, it's my responsibility, So, therefore, in one sense, I'm playing the role of the energetic, taking control of the situation. And based on the understanding, well, I'm not the energetic, I'm the energy. One can use that as an excuse to say, well, it's in Krishna's hands, and be irresponsible.
Yeah.
So how do you balance those two?
By remembering that we're servants and always performing our duty. Even in the spiritual world, there's duties and responsibilities that are reflected in the interaction between the living entities in the spiritual world. Just like if, the cowherd boys, they don't consider Krishna to be superior to them. Like Arjuna, he's a friend of Krishna, but not on the same level as the Gopas, the cowherd boy friends of Krishna. When Krishna, by Arjuna's request, when Krishna showed him his universal form, how did Arjuna react? He was fearful and he begged forgiveness from Krishna. The cowherd boys, they never beg forgiveness from Krishna. They never think Krishna is greater than them. They wrestle with him. Sometimes, Krishna carries them on their shoulders. Krishna, you're not so powerful. I beat you. Now you have to carry me on your shoulders. There's no question of begging forgiveness, because that's the nature of their relationship. And they'll slap Krishna on the back. Hey, Krishna, let's go out in the field and play. You won't find Mother Yashoda doing that. You won't find the gopis doing that. Because we interact with others differently according to the relationship. And here in the material world, we have the sense of duty. But in the spiritual world, it's the performance of the duty is there, but not necessarily the conscious awareness of it. It's just the purity of the relationship. But here in the material world, we think, well, I can do this or I cannot do it. I don't really have to do this. But no, I understand your point. So it's easy, in the material world, it's easy to become confused as to, are we the energy or are we the energetic? And especially considering the nature of the disease, bodily consciousness. And therefore, we are the energetic. I'm sorry, we're the energetic. The answer?
Kind of.
Wasn't really a question. Go ahead.
Well, it's a spiritual paradox. I mean, we're part and parcel of Krishna, so that the principle of wanting to control and enjoy is there, that is part of us. But at the same time, well, it's only in connection with Krishna. It's actually ultimately for Krishna's pleasure. Krishna is the ultimate controller, the ultimate enjoyer. But there's that paradox, because if I'm absorbed in thinking only that I'm serving and that Krishna's in control, there's that danger of not exercising that full commitment into an activity. And we've seen it. We've seen it in the growth, and I growing spiritually, that it's like, it was Krishna's arrangement. No, it was your stupidity that this happened, In other words, I haven't taken full responsibility. So how do we take full responsibility, but at the same time recognize that it's Krishna's in control?
Good question. How do we take full responsibility for our actions?
Mm-hmm.
Let's hear some comments on that. Any reflections? How do we take full responsibility in the material world? As a husband, as a father, how do you take responsibility? You do your duties. As fathers, as husbands, we have to earn the income to maintain the family. We have to raise the children properly. Like that, we just have to actually do whatever our duties are. That's how we have full responsibility. That's how we just accept it. This is my duty and do it. Otherwise, there's so many problems. And Arjuna, before the battle of Kurukshetra, he was arguing with Krishna. And he gave, from one perspective, he gave excellent reasons not to fight. Family tradition will be destroyed. Now think about that. If the family tradition is destroyed, the parents don't know how to treat the children, how to deal with the children. And so the children, they grow up with a misunderstanding of how a mother relates to the child, how a father relates to the child, how the child relates to both. And then, but this is their baseline then. This is normal. And then they treat their children like that, and the whole thing very quickly actually becomes degraded, becomes lost. And how is it possible to regain a family tradition that's been lost for generations when people don't even no longer aware of what it is? Think about that. How can you re-establish something that you don't even know exists anymore? It's really, really difficult. That was one of Arjuna's strongest statements. The family tradition will be destroyed. And he had so many other material considerations, which from the material perspective were seemingly very valid. But Krishna counteracted all of them by saying, no, it's my desire. So going back to your comment, that whose pleasure are we seeking for every particular action? And I like to give the analogy of it's a little harsh analogy, but somebody who is a severe drug addict, like a heroin addict, for example. Now, those of us who have never experienced it, which I'm sure is every one of us, intellectually understand it's just suffering. It's absolutely just suffering. When somebody injects poison into their body, but try to convince that person that you're not enjoying, that's just suffering. You'll never convince them. You'll never be able to convince them that when they inject the drug into their body, that they're not experiencing just ecstasy. That's what they're feeling. So whose pleasure are we looking for when we do a particular action? Are we doing it for the pleasure of the spiritual master, the pleasure of the Lord? Or are we doing it for the pleasure of this mind, these senses? And Prabhupada explains that actually, in every case, all material pleasure is simply trying to please the mind. The senses are never pleased. It's just the mind. And the uncontrolled mind, is like we have a consultant who today tells us do like this, and then tomorrow will tell us just totally the opposite. It's what the mind does. It accepts and rejects. It will put forward very, very nice arguments why we should do something that with our intelligence we know, I shouldn't do that. But the mind speaks very nicely, sweetly, flowery language to convince us to do it. And then the very next day, the next hour, the next week, it just completely rejects the whole thing. So that's why we have to perform our duty, learn how to control the mind. And when Krishna explained this process to Arjuna, what was Arjuna's reply? I think it's easier to control the wind than control my mind. And that was Arjuna. I mean, he had a very, very high parentage, a very, very high birth. He was an extremely exalted human being. And yet he thought, and my mind is so wild, it's easy to control the raging wind. Know what Krishna told him? He can be controlled by constant practice and by detachment. And when you have actually conquered the mind and controlled the mind, what's the result? For he who has conquered the mind, Super soul is already reached. And when we reach the super soul, we can hear the voice of Krishna speaking directly to us. And it's simply a matter of controlling the mind. Simply, right? Like it's easy, right? Constant practice of detachment. And yeah, that's why there's rules and regulations. They're meant for our protection. Sometimes we think, oh, why do I have to follow all these rules and regulations and duties and this? It's for our protection, it's for the protection of others. Just like when you drove in here, if you came in on 88, it's a windy road, there's 35 mile an hour speed limit, 25 mile an hour speed limit. And while you're driving, you can think, I don't want to follow those rules and regulations. I'm going to drive 75 miles an hour. Straight. Well, you can do it, but not necessarily a second time. You probably kill yourself, and even worse, you probably kill other people who are coming on the road in the other direction. So the rules and regulations are for our protection and for the protection of others. So out of a sense of duty, we have to, do what it is we're supposed to do. And our duty changes according to our station in life. When we're children, we have one particular kind of duty. We have to obey the mother and the father. We have to go to school and perform all this tapasya. When children, I'd rather go play. No, you have to perform tapasya. And tapasya means you have to go to school, you have to learn the subject matters, you have to study, so that you can get, a nice education and so on and so forth. Tapasya is required. So in a similar way, performing our duties is a type of tapasya. And if we want to at all elevate ourselves, it's absolutely required. Any other questions, comments? We have a microphone. Now, Kirti.
Thank you, Prabhu, for a wonderful class. You were explaining about 3 kinds of energy: the supreme, superior, marginal, and inferior.
Yes.
So I was just wondering about the word inferior. It's Krishna's Lord Krishna's energy, and then why is it called inferior? Anything related to him, how can it be inferior?
In relation to the other energies. In and of itself, it's inert. It can do nothing. It can't do a single thing until the superior energy infuses it with its own nature, the spiritual nature. Otherwise, it is incapable of doing any single thing. Makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind attention and participation. Shri Chaitanya Charitamrta ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Gaura Shakti Prabhu ki jai.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. First, I don't know where we're going with that.
Yeah. Where does the living entity go after partial dissolution?
Into the body of the Lord.
Of Gaura Shakti?
No, because the universe will all wrap back up.
That's fine.